man. All right, so I'm dealing with a 2010 Chevy Impala. It's 3500, 3.5 liter. It's got the p0522 EOP, or engine oil pressure sensor circuit low. So what's happening? There's no drivability problems. Everything works appropriately. There's no starting up, and since this has hydraulic lifters, there's no excessive tapping. There's none of that stuff going on. It's just when she drives the car, the oil pressure light or the oil light comes on saying she need to pull over safely and shut the vehicle off because the oil pressure sensor's falling off. Now that only happens when the signal falls off. Not when it's abnormally high. There's nothing to state that. There's no indication in the vehicle to state that you need to pull over because the oil pressure is too high, but it will trigger a code if it's out of specification. So we have those two codes. So we got low and high. So I'm kind of halfway through this joker already. I just took the heat shield off to get some better clearance, so I can show you the engine oil pressure sensor location. And I took this heat shield off. It's 4 bolts. There's 1, 2, 3, and then there's 4 right there. So the one that you see here at the top of the cover is going to sit under one of those other heat shield bolts. So that's that. It was a 10mm bolt. I used to pull that off. Alright. Let's look at PID data. One of the main things I want to show you before I tear into this, because there's no drivability problems. There's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just a check engine light code that's triggering. So I'm gonna start it up, and we'll look at PID data, and that's gonna show you. I'm gonna show you why why I'm not going to change, why I'm not going to replace it or do any further diagnosis of any wiring or anything like that. It's a simple circuit here. But let me pull up the live data and show you what I'm referring to. Good. Alright. So I'm going to show you the codes that we're dealing with. Because I want to pull this crap apart. Current. What's up with that? I'm not sure where that came from. That's new actually. Failed current, failed fuel system lean. I'm gonna come back to this one. Not sure why that came up. So p0523 and p0522. We got oil pressure sensor circuit high, oil pressure sensor circuit low. We're going to go to live data, and we're going to look at the engine oil pressure and coolant. I probably might pull up engine RPM also. Let's look up engine speed here. Look up engine coolant, and we're going to, let me just pull up the O2 because I'm going to monitor that long term. Oh shucks, what in the world? It's weird, it's lean. That's interesting. I think I know why. I think I do know why. Let me leave that. Engine oil pressure, here we go. I don't know why I got that power enrichment there. Alright, so we need to convert these tables to Fahrenheit and this to PSI. Alright, so it's producing 129 PSI allegedly, and you see those drop offs there. Let me slow this table down. Oh, wrong one. So when the tables fall off, that's when the vehicle indicates that it needs to shut down and pull over to the side because there's low oil pressure. This car is supposed to be producing around about, the rule of thumb is 10 psi for every 1,000 RPM. But typical vehicle that I service are around 15 psi, around 500, 600 RPM. So this car should have around about that, depending on the viscosity of the oil. So we do have normal temperatures, so it should be 110 psi lower. So, but that's not the case here. So the good thing is there's reflection here in the PCM, so the wiring integrity should be fine. If it was a fault, it would be constant drop-offs, and it would be somewhat stable, like it's trying to regulate or display the accurate temperature, but that's not the case. So I'm not going to worry about wiring integrity here. I'm just going to simply just replace the sensor, and if I have any problems, then I'll deal with that. But from everything I'm looking at, I don't think there's any wire integrity issues, just simply a bad sensor. So you see here, try to do something. Alright, O'Reilly's have it in stock. I'm also doing a tune-up on this, and I think because I took off the breather or something, that's probably why it's a little lean. I'm gonna figure that out. No, I know why. Because I took the oil cap off. Duh, it's a vacuum leak. No big deal. Alright, I'm gonna run to O'Reilly's to get these parts, and hopefully I can display the repair. We'll go from there. Alright, back from O'Reilly's, and if I can get my light to come on. Got a standard motor product. Well, it's a standard product, not standard motor. Let's take a gander at this sensor. Anybody gives two shits, here's the part number. p0523. It looks pretty cheaply made. Nah, I'll be straight up. Doesn't look robust, but I guess once I pull out the other one and I compare it, but it's very light, put it that way. I don't know how much room I'm gonna have to shove. I'm gonna take a wrench and try to get it around there and just loosen it up. I got pretty decent room. I just can't get the camera down here. Managed to get an adjustable wrench on it. So it's a small one. But I had to use a pair of vice grips to get around there because the aluminum housing was so soft that it just gave way. So I had to use a pair of vice grips to get down in there and bite it. Luckily I had enough room. It's just when I used a wrench, I had to use a small adjustable one and open it big enough to grasp it, but unfortunately the metal was so soft that it stripped it, started to round it out. So I just took a pair of vice grips and then just kind of inch it loose, and I think it should be loose enough to be able to spin it out now. Got them both out. Here's what I was referring to as the old one. Once I got a wrench on there and tried to turn it, it wanted to round off. And the main thing was because it's this O-ring here you're competing against that. So you're kind of loosen it up, and the O-ring has been stuck on there for a while, and that friction is what's keeping that sensor in there. So once I inched it loose, I was able to turn out with both hands. I can get both of my hands down in there and inch it out also, and it worked out. So I'm gonna put a little oil on here. There's a little bit of oil that comes out once you get it loose. Not a big deal. take some brake cleaner and shoot it. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the O-ring and get it turned back in there to in reverse order. So I might be able to take the wrench, the adjustable wrench, and just snug it, and should be fine. I got everything back on. It was set for the heat shield here, and unfortunately, when you're putting everything back in, you might have to use some other options. But like I had to use some channel locks to just inch it on there because it got a little hard to turn because of that rubber O-ring. Unfortunately, the metal is very soft. It's aluminum, it's a very cheap aluminum. I mean, even the factory ones, like they're just the same. But I just had to use the channel locks, inch it on there, and unfortunately the teeth are going to leave a little impression on there, but it's not going to keep the sensor from working, and it's just because I'm limited on space. But I don't know if you can see it, but there's a couple of bite marks on there, but it worked. So I'm gonna look at I'm gonna start the car up after I get the heat shield on here, look at some PID data, because I am putting plugs and wires on here also. It's got 115,000 miles on here, so we can go ahead and do a tune-up too. And but let's look at PID data once I get this heat shield on here. I thought I'd put an anti-seize on here, but being that the bolts were already, being that I've taken them out once, I shouldn't have to worry about having any issues removing them again if need be. These were just, oh shucks, these were just years of rust accumulation and bonding. So I think we're fine. Tin doesn't fit on here perfect, but I think maybe these, oh, like, see, yeah, that was the one that broke right there. I wonder, 3/8 will probably suffice, or either 9mm. And they fit better than the 3/8 I was going to try to use, but unfortunately, you know, I think we're good. Everything's working now. We're fine. Alright, I'm going to put the cap on, start up, and we'll look at PID data. Alright, the engine is currently running. Let me get this to focus. Alright, I'm not going to let it run too long because it'll warm up, and I really need to put plugs in here. Again, we're not going to pay attention to that lean system, because that was because of me pulling the cover off. There we go. There we go. Why did I do that? I just had it. Engine oil pressure. There we go. We got normal PSI. Let's look at the graph now. Before it was stuck on 129. Now we're at, I don't even know the RPM, so let's pull that engine RPM up. I'm not going to let it get too crazy hot. We can kind of test that rule of thumb. Sorta. Even though the temperatures are not completely hot, at 770 RPM, we have 30 PSI. It's fluctuating, so this is normal. And I'm pretty sure once it gets really hot and the engine goes into a deeper closed loop state, it'll start reflecting that rule of thumb. But it was just general. So I'm pretty sure this car probably has no problem idling at 20 PSI when it's fully warmed up. So other than that, this job took 30 minutes. Replace the sensor. It wasn't that bad at all. Especially if I had to do it again, it would not be that bad. I think once before I pulled the star out, but I really needed a lot more clearance, and it was just something I did on my own, so it's not a big deal. But other than that, hey, this car is done. Hit that link, subscribe to the channel, stay informed, have that reassurance of my work, because this might screw up. And it's a standard product. It's from O'Reilly's. Parts break, but just like the factory part, it broke. So hey, who knows? It might be the fix. We're not gonna know. All right, see you later.